Hi folks, Coach Ribaudo here again, and tonight I want to talk a little bit about motivation. It's a very important part of athletics and just life in general, and I want to talk to you about one of the great motivators that I've known in my life. His name was Ollie Mayfield, and he was one of my older brother's high school football coaches, and he was my geometry teacher, oddly enough, and he was just a great motivator, a great football coach, and he could bring the best out in you. And his overall philosophy was this: you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And he did that in geometry class, and he did that on the football field. And what that means is, you know, he would point out your strengths more than your weaknesses. He would praise extremely loud, but he would criticize really quietly. You know, he would correct you, but when he praised you, boy, he praised you. You know, even in geometry class, I remember he would lay down that test right in front of you. Then he'd pull a chair up right in front of you, and he'd look in the eye and go, "You can do this." And one time we were about to take a geometry test. He put the test down on everybody's desk, and he said, "Well, you know, Mark hasn't scored." In front of the whole class, he says this. "You know, Mark hasn't scored very well in the last two tests, but I guarantee you he's going to get an A on this one." And he says that in front of the whole class, and you're just sitting there as a sophomore in geometry, and you know, you're looking, "Oh my God, he thinks I'm going to get an A. I better not let him down." And he would do the same thing in football. He'd get the whole team, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. He'd gather them all up, and he'd line up the offense, and he'd go right down, player by player. And he'd say, "This offensive center right here, this is the best offensive center I've ever coached in my career." And he'd go next to guard. "This guard's the best guard in the city. We're going to run it on 4th and 1 right behind him." And he'd go to fullback. He'd go, "Kenny is the best fullback in the city. We're going to get yards with Kenny. We're going to feed him the football because he's a great running back." And he'd say something. You'd be standing there, and he'd say something about you in front of the whole program, in front of everybody. And you would just sit there and go, "Oh my God, Coach thinks I'm the best fullback in the city. Man, I am not going to let him down." He'd gather up the parents in a pre-season meeting in the summer before school started, and he'd do the same thing. He'd go kid by kid, and in front of your parents, in front of your families, and he'd just say, you know, everybody's strengths, and you did not want to let the guy down because he made you think, and I believe that he believed in you. You know, he believed in you enough to, in front of everybody, to say that you were the best in the city or something like, "We're going to run the ball right here, right behind him on 4th and 1. And boy, he made you really feel good about your strengths, and you did not want to let Ollie down. Well, one of his things was this poem. He introduced us all this poem. He made a poster that was probably 10 feet tall and 5 feet wide, and he hand-painted this poem on it, and he hung it up in the locker room. It was there for years. So every time you'd walk in the locker room, you would see this poem, and it's called Thinking, and I don't know who the author is, but it's called Thinking, so I'll tell it to you right now. I'll recite it for you. It's, "If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can't, it's almost a cinch you won't. If you think you lose, you're lost, for out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later the one who wins is the one who thinks he can." And that's the poem Thinking, and he had that up in the locker room, and every day you'd walk in there and you'd read a little bit of it. You couldn't help it. It was a huge poster. And you would start believing that. And sometimes in geometry class on the test, you know, you'd get a good grade, and right below the grade he'd write, "Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man." You know, something like that. You know, sooner or later the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. He'd put that on your test so you'd read it. Or a homeroom would come around on game day, and somebody'd knock on the door, and they'd say they had a note for you if you were a player. And the note would come to you, and you'd open it up, and it would say, "Success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind, Coach Mayfield," you know. Or it would say, "We can, we will, Coach Mayfield." So thinking was a big deal. Positive thinking was a big deal with Coach Mayfield. He was a huge positive thinker. His staff was, and he made you think positive about yourself. And you know, think about that. where you're dealing with young guys, you're dealing with young kids, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they're not sure of themselves about anything in their life. They're questioning what they can do in all their classes, relationships, girl things, friendship things. The parents are on them. They seem like they can't do anything right. And then there's this one guy that you go to school. There's this one guy that believes in you. You know, you're sitting there in geometry class and you don't get it at all. But this one guy believes in you. So you keep going back for more. You know, his team, he always had huge football teams. Kids wanted to be around him. And he did it sincerely. He just didn't throw out false compliments. I mean, he would find the one thing you were good at, and he would tell the world about it. And that's really important for young people. Even college, it doesn't matter if they're high school or college. College-age kids are still unsure of themselves. They're unsure about their future. They've got relationships still going on, the relationship thing. They're not sure about their football prowess. You know, it's a new thing for them. They're in college now, and they're not sure that they can make the cut. You know, there are college-level players out there with them, and they're not sure of themselves. And then this guy starts preaching to you about, listen, life's battles don't always go to the stronger, faster man. Sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. And, you know, if you say that over and over enough, you'll get people to believe. You know, and if you believe in them, they will believe. And then they'll start following you. And it's amazing. To me, it's a lot more effective than pointing out everybody's shortcomings. You know, you have to correct. You have to make corrections. And you have to strive for perfection. And you have to show improvement, so on and so forth. But you do get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Just think about human nature. We all love a good compliment. I mean, you feel good when somebody says, hey, you look sharp today. You're looking good today. Hey, that's a nice shirt you got on there. Or, hey, are you losing weight? Man, you look great. Doesn't that just make your day? You want to be around that person more? Or if your boss says you're doing a good job. You know, I've had bosses every once in a while. A man that I thought the world of came in and told me, you know, I think you're one of the best defensive coordinators I've ever worked with. When he told me that, man, I couldn't believe it. I did not want to let that man down. You know, I felt so good about myself. And on the other side, when we get scolded, when we get corrected, you just automatically don't feel that good. You don't feel good about yourself. So Ali was very big on bringing out the best in you by believing in you and showing you what you do good and telling the world about it. You know, telling everybody that you do things good. And he always would put life's battles don't always go to the stronger, faster man, but sooner or later the one who wins is the one who thinks he can. And he would go into every season and he'd say, we're gonna beat this team, and here's how we're gonna do it. And we're gonna run this, and we're gonna run that. We're gonna do this on defense. We're gonna run the ball right behind this offensive guard. We're gonna give the ball to Kenny, and we're gonna get yards on that thing. And they might stop us once or twice, but I guarantee you they won't stop us the whole game. And you would believe. And once he got those kids believing, boy, he turned around a team that had lost like 22 straight games. And Ollie came in there, and they had their first winning season, and he had like 5-6 years of winning seasons. And they ran the straight T, double tight, dead T. And they threw the ball once every blue moon. But he won, he went to playoffs because those kids believed, man. They believed in themselves. They believed in Coach Mayfield. They believed in what he was doing. And thinking was a big part of it. That poem was a big part of it. And I still recite that poem and give it to my linebackers, because in anything in this life, and particularly in sports, you've got to go in thinking you can win. You know, winners expect to win. Champions expect to win. They know they're going to find a way to win. You always hear that cliche. They find a way to win. They believe they're going to win. And if you've got talent and you know what your strengths are, a good coach gathers talent, and then he finds what the strengths of that team is, and he tells them what their strengths are, and he tells them how they're going to win using those strengths. And winning teams always do that. They revert back to what they do good. When times are hard, you watch those championship teams, they go right back to what they do good. Whether it's run the ball, throw the short pass, throw the deep ball, play great D, play great on specials. They always revert back to what they do best, and then things start rolling for them, and they start going, and that gets you through the tough times. But the power of positive thinking is amazing, and it really can work miracles in young people's life, young men's lives, and it can change their lives. I've seen them do it. I saw Ollie Mayfield change a lot of kids' lives, and with that team that went 22-0, 0-22 rather, excuse me, everybody in town thought they were a bunch of losers. Till Ollie Mayfield showed up, and then he started talking about thinking and thinking positive and pointing out their strengths. And those guys changed, and they won. They went to playoffs, and all those kids, all of a sudden, they weren't losers anymore. They were winners, and that has carried those. Those guys are 50 years old now, in their 50s, and they're winners. They're husbands and fathers, and I think a big part of that was what Coach Mayfield did, and Coach Mayfield did that through the power of positive thinking, and everybody's grateful for him. Grateful to him for that, and I think that that helps the program. I know it helps me. It helps me when I'm coaching my guys. So maybe it'll help you. So have a good evening, and thank you.